on a military parade.
Why is it wasteful?
It is wasteful.
Why?
It is what do we need to show off our military for? But that's strongmen do that. It has nothing to do with pride in the military.
Alright, where do we even begin, because you can't make this stuff up. For the first time in recent military history, we finally have some pretty good numbers as far as the recruitment numbers overall for the US military. And Donald Trump says, well, let's have a parade. Let's celebrate our US military for the first time in a while. But Democrats are saying, nah, we don't need to do that. Why would we celebrate the US military?
Parade.
A military parade?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We're going to celebrate our military. We have the greatest military in the world.
What's the price tag?
People, peanuts compared to the value of doing it. We have the greatest missiles in the world. We have the greatest submarines in the world. We have the greatest army tanks in the world. We have the greatest weapons in the world. And we're going to celebrate it.
Now, that is all Donald Trump said about this parade, and Democrats are having a complete meltdown. And by the way, even though it just sounds like a parade, when you dig into the statistics, this parade might actually be very important, and we'll dig into it.
We don't need a military parade. We don't need to spend millions or maybe hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. But we want to do it because he has to feed his inner image monster.
He said it himself. He wants. Are you guys against the military parade?
Love the military.
$100
million on it?
I don't think it's called.
You cannot be cutting tens of thousands of federal workers at the same time you say we're going to waste money on a military parade.
Why is it wasteful?
It is wasteful.
Why?
It is what do we need to show off our military for? But that's strongmen do that. It has nothing to do with pride in the military. Strongmen do that because they want to make their citizens cower. They want to say, we are strong. I am here. I have all these weapons. Aren't you proud of me?
Now, please stick with me because that meltdown gets even more intense. Remember, that Democrat is saying, we don't need a parade. Everyone knows everything about the US military. Why would we do this? Because it's not true what that guy is saying. Young Americans have fewer ties to friends or family members who have served in the military. There is a declining presence of veterans in our society. 77% of people between the ages of 17 and 24, they need some sort of medical waiver to even qualify to get into the US military. So understand, this one parade, as big and bad as Donald Trump wants it to be, could be the first exposure to a young person who is seeing the military or something about the military for the first time in a positive light.
We don't need to do that. We know that our military is, multiples the size of anybody else's military on the planet. We don't need them to bring the missiles down Pennsylvania Avenue in order for us to know that.
It's not about the size. In the last 4 years, morale in the military was down, recruitment was down. There is a concerted effort going on right now at the Pentagon, and it's already successful, to enhance recruitment and to enhance pride and the idea of joining the military. I think you all are discounting the idea that a national parade for our military to show off our military, to show pride in the veterans that have defended this country, and you all are mad about
the veterans. He was just trying to rename Veterans Day.
I'm super proud of our military, but I don't think we should waste money. I think that the worst thing for morale that I've seen is Pete Hegseth as the defense secretary.
That's the worst thing I've seen.
Now, the last time CNN talked about veterans, it ended very bad for CNN. So if you have a drink or some popcorn, you're going to need it for the next clip. I think you're going to like it. But again, Democrats are arguing, look, we can't have this parade. It's going to cost a lot of money. We will dig into that. And of course, Republicans are arguing we need to keep the momentum up. We need to keep the numbers up as far as recruitment, and this parade could help.
All right. Well, Kaylin, Senator, you undoubtedly do not want to talk about the VA. I have a question as VA Secretary. As Cabinet, I want to ask you, because I've been curious about this, because my job is to take care of veterans, and I would like to know why CNN is hostile to veterans, especially one in Florida, where you just had a $5 million defamation suit taking offense at a veteran who was trying to help people. In fact, one of your employees actually said, we're going to nail him. I have a question for you, Kaylin. Is that employee still employed? Are you really concerned about veterans? So if we don't want to talk about veterans now, you want to talk about everything else, I'd like to hear from CNN as the Veteran Cabinet Secretary why CNN seems to have a problem with veterans.
Well, Mr. Secretary, respectfully, my question was about whether or not you as a member of the cabinet use this. And
like I said, I am surprised CNN even talked about veterans, considering the last time they talked about veterans, the Secretary of the VA really blew up on CNN. Now, let's talk about this wasteful spending. I wonder how Democrats feel about this wasteful spending.
Sean and Legend brought to our attention that at least $40 million per week, $40 million per week in taxpayer money is ending up in the hands of the Taliban and then is later being auctioned off. Cash is flown by charter jets into Afghanistan. It's auctioned off to the Taliban in order to exchange it for the Afghan currency. From there, the Taliban will get it to the NGOs who have to pay taxes on that money. The NGOs have to be approved by the Taliban, and every time the NGOs spend the money, the Taliban will take a cut.
So I hope you can see the irony. Taxpayer money going to the enemies of the United States, and now all of a sudden Democrats want to care about spending money on a military parade when the morale of the US military has been so low, and I showed you the data straight from the DoD that a young population in the United States has almost no exposure to veterans or the US military in a positive light. This is why it's comical that Democrats care so much about this parade and spending money on it.
We had some very good news last night. The Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that. And we will stop the bombs. And they have capitulated, but more importantly, we will take their word. They say they will not be blowing up ships anymore. And that's what the purpose of what we were doing. So that's just news. We just found out about that. So I think that's very, very positive. They were knocking out a lot of ships going, as you know, sailing beautifully down the various seas. It wasn't just the canal. It was a lot of other places. And I will accept their word, and we are going to stop the bombing of the Houthis. Effective immediately, and Marco, you'll let everybody know that.
So, I do want to point this out. This might be the worst timing for Democrats per usual, because now we finally have some good news coming out of the Middle East that the US military has actually completed a mission as of right now, as far as an enemy opponent giving up. Some might say the US military won the war for now. However, even Pete Hegseth is saying the point of this parade is to inspire or to show everybody what 250 million years of excellence is all about in regards to the parade.
You know, it's the basic stuff they slip by us, the small lies they tell us. Those are the ones that grow in the minds of young people who then turn around and don't love their country. A huge part of ensuring we have a room like this full in the future is ensuring our kids and grandkids know why America is such a special place. What our founders gifted us 250 years ago. There's a reason we're going to have a big old Army parade on June 14th of 2025. It's because what we celebrate in this country is a reflection of what we value. There are a lot of vapid things to celebrate, plenty of reality shows and garbage music and stuff on Netflix. How about we hold up our special operations community? How about we recognize the Army and the Marine Corps of the United States at 250 years, the sacrifice of those men who stood on bridges 250 years ago and said, we will live free. We have an incredible story to tell, if we're willing to tell it. And then if we're willing to raise young men and women willing and able to raise their right hand to defend this nation.
Now, I don't want to throw every Democrat under the bus, because if you go and read some comments, even on prevalent Democrat pages on the internet, there are even some complaints in their own comment section saying, okay, hold on, it's the US military, they do get a pass, and you would hate on Donald Trump if he did not do this 250th year anniversary parade or celebration.
Secretary Noem, you've designated the Army's 250th birthday parade in Washington, D.C. on June 14th as a national special security event, meaning DHS will use taxpayer funding to help with enhanced security and support. June 14th is also President Trump's 79th birthday. At the same time that this administration is canceling critical cybersecurity and disaster recovery funding under the guise of so-called waste and abuse, it's being publicly reported that this event will involve a full military presence crossing the Potomac from the Pentagon to Constitution Avenue. We recently received your fiscal year 2025 spend plans for the Secret Service, but the costs for this event were not included.
Now, I am really curious how you guys all feel about this. Of course, we are probably all thinking the same thing. Why now all of a sudden do Democrats really care about the budget, especially when it comes to national security, but especially when it comes to the U.S. military, when we can cite a lot of cases of all of these same Democrats? You didn't hear a word from them as far as the wasteful spending we've been seeing under the Biden administration.
There is this plan for the military/birthday parade. I'm curious, how do you think reporters should cover this? You know, are we just going to be standing there walking alongside the parade like business as usual? What are you going to do, and what do you think our industry should do to handle this and contextualize it in the most appropriate way?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's a fantastic question. I'm sure that is a discussion happening across newsrooms in the country. I think first and foremost, everything with this administration, the reality is that context is king, right? You want to report on what is happening in the moment, but you also want to report on everything that surrounds it.
Now, I have to point this out because this is feeling a little awkward. Are we supposed to be involved in this conversation? Are we supposed to be watching this? It sounds like they're having their meeting right now in the briefing room. How are we supposed to cover this news story? That's your job, not ours. Why are you talking about it? But second off, she wants to talk about context. I'm sure she's going to give us all very relevant context only within the last several months and not within the last 4 years. I mean, you could even argue 10 years.
Understanding its place in society, understanding where it's coming from, understanding whether or not Donald Trump is, how truthful he's being about certain things. Obviously, the military parade is something that Donald Trump has been talking about since the campaign trail. There are other countries that Trump visited when he stepped one foot inside of North Korea that also has things like military parades, right? So we kind of see the genesis of
You are hearing that correctly, because Donald Trump went to North Korea, and we're just ignoring the fact that a U.S. president actually made contact with the North Korean leadership, which was a monumental moment. I mean, this is literally historical stuff. We're ignoring that part, but now we're going to make a comparison. He went to North Korea, thus now we look like North Korea because they have military parades.
Some of these ideas, but I think for our purposes as journalists, we have to do what we're doing day in and day out, which is speak truth without fear or favor of what this administration could do. And that's honestly telling people that, it's not going to be free, that it's going to cost potentially $45 million is what estimates have said, that it would fall on different units inside of the Army, including the Navy, all those things like that, potentially taking away from money that's used for training. And just really all about how this military parade not just came to be, but its effect in the country and whether or not, it's something that Americans want to see on their streets.
Now, let me tell you this. The real irony behind all of this is the fact I'm even standing up for a military parade. Because if I was making this video back in 2014 when I was in the 101st Airborne, I would say no to the military parade. I hate this thing. But the context is different. Again, when you look at the statistics, when you look at the low morale, when you look at the fact of how bad Afghanistan went, the last thing you could do is remind everyone, just so you know, we're doing okay. This is our military, and we're here to stay. We're here to fight. Thank you guys for everything. Thank you for being here. God bless, and we'll see you all later.